My name is Christabel, and I've spent years working in corporate, chasing promotions and climbing the ladder. People often ask how I managed to land such a high-profile job at my age, and my answer is always the same: hard work, dedication, and a bit of luck. But what they don't know is that my success came at a steep price. I've faced challenges that most people can't even imagine, and I've had to fight tooth and nail for every scrap of respect. But one particular experience changed everything for me. It started with a man named Billy, my boss, who thought he could control me, silence me, and keep me quiet. But what he didn't know was that I had a voice, and I was ready to use it. I walked into the office, exchanging nods with colleagues as I made my way to my desk. Billy, my boss, was already there, sipping his coffee and reviewing some papers. He called me over to his office, and I assumed it was for a meeting about the upcoming project. "Christabel, I need to talk to you about your role in the project," he said, his voice firm but with an undertone I couldn't quite decipher. "What's going on, Billy?" I asked, taking a seat. "You're going to be working closely with me on this," he said, his eyes lingering on me a bit too long. "I expect you to be available at all times, including outside of work hours." I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I pushed it aside, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. "Okay, got it," I said, nodding. But then he said something that made my skin crawl. "Let's grab dinner tonight to discuss the details. My place." I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "I don't think that's necessary, Billy," I said finally. "We can discuss everything here in the office." Billy's expression changed, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Fine," he said. "But I expect you to be fully committed to this project, Christabel." "I expect nothing but your best." I left his office feeling uneasy, wondering if I had just misread the situation entirely. But as I walked back to my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next few days passed with Billy's behavior becoming increasingly unsettling. He'd find excuses to touch base with me, often standing too close or making comments about my work that felt more like veiled suggestions. I'd brush it off, telling myself I was being too sensitive, but the discomfort lingered. One evening, as I was packing up to leave, Billy stopped by my desk. "Christabel, I need your help with something," he said, his voice low. "Can you come with me to the storage room for a minute?" I hesitated, unsure why we needed to go to the storage room, but I followed him anyway. As we stood among the shelves, he began explaining some minor adjustment to a project file. His proximity made me step back, but there wasn't much space to maneuver. "Let's just do this another time, Billy," I said, trying to edge past him. But he didn't move. "You're really good at this, Christabel," he said, his voice taking on a tone that made my skin crawl. "I think you have a lot of potential." I pushed past him, my heart racing as I walked back to my desk. The rest of the evening was a blur as I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept wandering back to Billy and his behavior. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. I tried to brush off the incident in the storage room, focusing on my work and avoiding Billy whenever possible. But it seemed like he was always lurking around the corner, waiting to pounce. One day, I received an email from him, summoning me to his office. I arrived, my heart sinking as I took a seat. "Christabel, I've been noticing that you've been distant lately," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Is everything okay?" I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Everything's fine, Billy," I said finally. "Good," he said, leaning forward, "because I think it's in your best interest to focus on your work and avoid distractions. Let's just keep our interactions professional, shall we?" I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized what he was implying. He was trying to silence me, to keep me from speaking out about his behavior. "I don't know what you're talking about, Billy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's just forget about the storage room incident," he said, his eyes glinting. "It didn't happen, and let's keep it that way, okay?" I nodded, feeling trapped and unsure of what to do next. But as I left his office, I knew I couldn't let his words go unchallenged. I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease after my conversation with Billy. I knew I had to speak out about his behavior, but I was scared. What if no one believed me? What if I got fired? I confided in a colleague, Wendy, who listened attentively as I recounted the incidents. "You need to report him," she said firmly. "You can't let him get away with this." But I was hesitant. "What if it's my word against his?" I asked. "What if I don't have enough evidence?" Wendy nodded understandingly. "I get it, Christabel, but you can't just sit back and do nothing. You have to take action." I knew she was right, but the fear of retaliation held me back. I started to doubt myself, wondering if I was overreacting or if it was all in my head. Days turned into weeks, and I struggled to muster the courage to speak out. Billy continued to make me uncomfortable, and I felt like I was walking on eggshells around him. One day, I ran into Brittany, a senior colleague, in the break room. She asked how I was doing, and I found myself opening up to her about Billy's behavior. She listened intently, her expression growing more serious by the minute. "Christabel, you need to report this," she said firmly. "I'll support you if you decide to go to HR." Her words gave me the push I needed. I realized that I wasn't alone, and that there were people who believed me and would stand up for me. I scheduled a meeting with Brittany and Wendy to discuss my options. We sat in a quiet cafe after work, surrounded by the hum of conversation and clinking cups. "I'm tired of being scared, tired of being silenced," I said, my voice firm. "I want to report Billy's behavior to HR." Brittany nodded in agreement. "That's a brave step, Christabel. We'll support you every step of the way." Wendy pulled out a notebook and began scribbling notes. "Let's document everything, every incident, every conversation. We'll build a strong case against him." I felt a sense of determination wash over me. I was taking control, standing up for myself. "What's the next step?" I asked, looking at Brittany and Wendy. "We'll schedule a meeting with HR," Brittany said. "We'll present our case and let them handle it from there." I nodded, feeling a sense of resolve. I was ready to face whatever came next. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firm. Together, we began making plans, gathering evidence and preparing for the battle ahead. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for my rights, for my dignity, and for my career. I sat in the HR office, flanked by Brittany and Wendy, as we waited for the investigator to arrive. The door opened, and a middle-aged woman with a kind face and a professional demeanor walked in. "Good morning, Christabel," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Karen, the HR representative assigned to your case. I'll be investigating the allegations you've made against Billy." I nodded, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Karen began by explaining the investigation process, assuring me that everything would be handled confidentially and professionally. "Let's start with your complaint," Karen said, pulling out a notebook and pen. "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" I took a deep breath and recounted every incident, every conversation, and every encounter with Billy. Karen listened attentively, her expression growing more serious by the minute. "I see," she said, nodding. "We'll need to speak with Billy and gather more information. Can you provide us with any evidence you may have?" I handed over the notes and documents Wendy had helped me compile. Karen reviewed them carefully, her eyes scanning the pages. "I'll also need to speak with any witnesses," she said. "Can you provide me with a list of people who may have seen or heard something?" I thought for a moment before rattling off a few names. Karen nodded, making a note of them. "This investigation will be thorough and fair," she assured me. "We'll do our best to get to the bottom of this." I left the HR office feeling a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, justice would be served. Days turned into weeks as the investigation continued. I tried to focus on my work, but the uncertainty was eating away at me. Finally, Karen called me into her office again. "Christabel, we've completed our investigation," she said, her expression serious. "We've found evidence that supports your allegations against Billy." I felt a surge of relief and vindication. "What happens next?" I asked. "Billy will face disciplinary action," Karen said. "We'll be holding a meeting with him today to discuss the findings and the consequences." I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. But then Karen dropped a bombshell. "Christabel, Billy has denied all allegations and is threatening to take action against you for making false accusations." My heart sank. This wasn't over yet. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice firm. "It means we'll need to prepare for a potential lawsuit," Karen said. "But don't worry, we'll support you every step of the way." I left the office feeling determined. I was ready to fight for my rights, no matter what it took. The days that followed were a blur of meetings and discussions with HR and our company's lawyers. Billy's threats of a lawsuit hung over me like a cloud, but I refused to back down. I had done the right thing, and I was determined to see it through. One afternoon, Karen called me into her office once more. "Christabel, we've reached a resolution," she said, her expression neutral. "Billy has agreed to leave the company, effective immediately." I felt a mix of relief and vindication. It was over. Billy would no longer be a part of our workplace, and I had stood up for myself. "But there's something else," Karen continued. "The company wants to offer you a settlement in exchange for your agreement not to pursue further action." I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to take the settlement and move on, but another part of me wanted to fight for justice. "What kind of settlement?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "A substantial sum of money and a guarantee of protection from any future retaliation," Karen explained. I thought about it for a moment, weighing my options. I decided to take the settlement, knowing it would give me the freedom to move forward with my life. I signed the papers, and it was done. Billy was gone, and I had closure. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the familiar comforts of home, and reflected on the past few months. The journey had been long and arduous, but I had emerged stronger and more resilient. I thought about Billy and the pain he had caused me, but I didn't let the anger consume me. Instead, I focused on the lessons I had learned. I realized that speaking out had been the hardest but most empowering thing I had ever done. It had taken courage, but it had also given me a voice. I thought about the people who had supported me, Brittany and Wendy, and how they had stood by me through thick and thin. As I looked back, I knew that I had grown as a person. I had learned to stand up for myself and to trust my instincts. I had discovered a strength within me that I never knew I had. I thought about my future and the possibilities that lay ahead. I knew that I would face challenges, but I was ready. I had learned to be brave, to be honest, and to be true to myself. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I was no longer the same person who had been silenced and intimidated. I was stronger, wiser, and more confident. I was ready for whatever came next. If you're facing a similar situation, know that you're not alone. There are people who care, who will listen, and who will support you. Don't let fear hold you back. Speak up, seek help, and demand justice. You deserve to be heard, to be believed, and to be protected. You have the power to create change, to stand up for yourself and for others. Don't let anyone silence you or make you feel like you're not worthy. You are strong, capable, and deserving of respect. If you're struggling to find your voice, remember that it's okay to ask for help. Reach out to trusted friends, family, or authorities. You don't have to face this alone. You are not just a victim, you are a survivor. And as a survivor, you have the power to inspire others, to create a ripple effect of courage and resilience. So, take a deep breath, gather your strength, and stand up for what you believe in. Your voice matters, and it's time to make it heard. Thank you for listening to my story. Kindly like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you.